Molly's game. Molly loved life. She had a great boyfriend and plenty of loyal friends. Then a man appeared one evening in her local. She could tell straight away there was something about him she didn't trust. She kept her distance. Her gut instinct was usually very reliable. Her best mate Suzanne, on the other hand, was all over him. It was embarrassing to watch, while she made a fool of herself. Molly cringed. She glanced at her watch. It was 9:56 p.m. The pub closed dead on 11, occasionally a bit later if a crowd were in. By 10:15, Molly felt agitated as she gave the new chap a horrible stare. Molly disliked him immensely. She couldn't explain it, usually getting on with everyone she met. It didn't make any sense. Suzanne joined her at the table. "He's so charming," she said, giving him a quick look. Molly disagreed. "There's something about him I don't like." Suzanne turned to her, replying, "Well, I think he's nice." "Well, you would," Molly said, not believing Suzanne's taste in men. Her last boyfriend was a right sleaze. "It's your life, mate." "Fancy a drink?" asked Suzanne, "even though you don't deserve one, you miserable cow." Both burst out laughing. "Yes, I'd love one," said Molly. "But I must be off soon. Early start in the morning." Suzanne got up while playing with her long blonde hair, then walked to the bar. Molly watched her with interest. The mysterious man stood a short distance from her friend, giving her a wink. Suzanne loved the attention. She smiled back. Molly knew it was going to end in tears, because it always did. Wake up and smell the roses. The chance of that happening, well, what can you honestly say? Disaster waiting to happen was the only way of looking at it. Her friend came back with 2 drinks, placing them on the table carefully, because she was a little tipsy. "There you go, mate," she said while giggling. "So, how's Loverboy?" Molly asked. Suzanne sighed, before answering, "He's so handsome. He's going to be mine by the end of the night." "Oh God." Molly couldn't help herself, and said bluntly, "When it all goes to shit, don't expect me to be there for you. This has happened too many times now." "Sod you," was all Suzanne answered, picking up her drink, and making her way to the bar. She looked to where her mate was, now being chatted up by him. The worst thing happened. Suzanne gave her a cold stare, before putting her arm around the new bloke. They made their way to the entrance. Molly was heartbroken. An idea came to her. It sounded a little strange, but she truly believed he was bad news. She would follow them. Molly felt uneasy about this, but she adored Suzanne to bits. If anything ever happened to her beloved mate, she'd never forgive herself. She'd made her mind up. Molly finished her drink, then left the building. It was a bit chilly, so putting her coat on, she followed them. She didn't like this one bit. She observed them going down a darkened alley. "What are you doing, Suzanne? You hardly know him." Without trying to make any noise, Molly crept to the opening, peering in their direction. The two had stopped halfway down while they kissed passionately. Molly felt like a pervert. What was she doing? If her mate ever found out about this, it would be the end of their friendship. It was time to leave. "Be careful, you silly cow," she said quietly, before making her way back up the road towards home. She awoke feeling anxious. The clock read 4:47 a.m. Way too early. She closed her eyes, hoping to get back to sleep. She was all on her own, as her boyfriend was working away. In another week he'd be back. Molly couldn't wait. She thought back to the evening before, hoping Suzanne had got home safely. Tomorrow, at some point, she'd give her a ring to apologize. Within minutes, she had drifted off. Molly was late for work. She was usually so reliable. Maybe it was worrying about Suzanne. As soon as possible Molly would ring her, to see if everything was fine. She hated leaving things like this, especially with good mates. She ran into the office, heading straight for her desk, when she saw her boss standing there, looking far from happy. He looked her up and down, before saying angrily, "You're late again, Ms. Jameson. So what's your excuse this time?" She went for the easy option. The traffic was a nightmare. Sorry, sir. He folded his arms, unimpressed with her excuse. Next time you'll be out, do you understand? Yes, boss, she replied before sitting down. What an idiot. She peered at all the papers on her desk that needed to be completed that day. What a nightmare. At lunchtime, she rang Suzanne. There was no answer. Why wasn't she picking up? During afternoon break, she tried again. Still the same outcome. Molly was getting worried now. At 5 p.m. she left the office in a hurry. It took her about 20 minutes to get to her friend's house. Outside was a police car. This wasn't looking good. Mary got out of her vehicle, proceeding to the entrance. The door was ajar, so she made her way in. Suzanne, are you there? She shouted. Down the hallway, she saw a photo on the wall of them, when they were children. My God, that brings back good memories. Who are you? Said a voice from the stairs. Molly looked up stunned. A policeman stood there. He made his way down. At the bottom, he asked again, Who are you, miss? She didn't understand what was going on. Where's Suzanne? She lives here, you see? I've been trying to call her all day. The man rubbed his forehead, before saying in a very serious manner, I'm afraid I have some terrible news about Suzanne. This morning she was found dead. I'm so sorry to have to tell you that. She was absolutely horrified. Her hands covered her face, she ran out of the house, crying. She got into her vehicle and sat there quietly. Her mind was numb. Molly couldn't take it in, what the man had said. How could this have happened? A knock at the window, Molly saw the policeman through the glass. He gave her the signal to get out. A moment later, she said, I still can't believe it. Was it him? That bloody man, Suzanne had left the pub with, was to blame. He'd caused this. If she ever saw the bastard on the street, she'd do the same to him. The officer scratched the side of his face, then answered, What man? I didn't like him the moment I clapped eyes on him. I knew there was something about him, she said angrily. The man seemed confused, before saying, From what we can gather, a young man and woman were shot dead, about 10:15 p.m., just off Bycrove Road. The woman, I'm afraid, was your friend. The media hasn't given any names yet, of the victims. I'm so sorry for your loss. Molly was dumbfounded, replying. Oh my God. So it wasn't him. I can't believe it. I have to apologize, but I'm finding it hard to take this all in. For a little while, the policeman asked her some questions, and she answered them the best she could. By 6:30, Molly was back home. She didn't fancy eating anything, and just headed to her bedroom for some much-needed rest. She had the next day off, explaining to her boss what had happened. Surprisingly, he was very understanding about the whole thing. She had a conversation with her partner on the phone. He was shocked by the news, even saying he would come home immediately, but she didn't want him to get into trouble, and said it was fine to carry on working. Molly watched the BBC News to see if there were any updates on the terrible death of her friend. The report concluded that it had been a double shooting, and it was either drug-related or gang rivalry. It made Molly very sad that Suzanne had been dragged into this, ending her life in such a tragic way. Not knowing what to do with herself, she decided to visit someone she used to go to school with. She needed answers about the shooting, and this certain chap had always been a drug user, so maybe he would know who was responsible. It was a long shot, but anything was worth a try. Molly knocked on the door, then waited patiently for Kevin to answer. The house was in bad shape, the brickwork was dirty, the garden was untidy, as the grass grew over a foot high, and the fence which surrounded it was in tatters. The door opened. Kevin stood in the darkened hallway, looking awful. He was unshaven, his hair was long and unwashed. His eyes seemed blank. Who are you? He asked aggressively. The stench from inside made her feel sick. She said, It's Molly. We went to school together. He looked her up and down suspiciously, replying, Do you want to buy some cannabis? I suppose that's why you're here. Molly was disgusted. How dare you, she said. Kevin shut the door in her face. He wasn't getting rid of her that easy. Molly shouted through the entrance, "Did you hear about my friend getting murdered not too far from here? It was down to your scummy mates. So you'd better open up, before I start shouting my mouth off about it." The door opened quickly, he pulled her into the hallway. He slammed the door shut. "So what do you want?" he said nervously. His eyes were wide, full of fear. "I want the bastard's name." "That's all," she replied, giving him a serious look. "He caused Suzanne's death." He said, "Why me? I don't need this. For God's sake, if the big man finds out, I'm a dead man." Finally, she was getting somewhere. "So you know who did it? Tell me, and if you don't, I'll go straight to the police and tell them your name. Before you know it, this place will be swarming with them." "So, who was it, Kevin?" He sat down on the stairs biting his nails, before saying, "There's talk in the town that Jeff Cattersby is involved. But it didn't come from me. Got it?" She still needed answers. "But why did they slaughter my friend?" she asked. He replied, "From what I've heard, Jeff was after the new kid in town. He owed Jeff a lot of money for drugs. Your friend was an eyewitness to the murder, this is why she was killed. Wrong time, wrong place. Poor Suzanne, she thought. Thank you. I won't say anything to the police. You have my word," she said. She left the house, leaving him still sat on the stairs with a worried look on his face. The plan was to find this guy, and make him pay. If she went to the police, he'd probably be out, in less than a day, because of lack of evidence. An eye for an eye. Revenge is sweet, and she couldn't wait. In the safety of her house, she did her homework on this guy. Looking through the phone book, there were 3 surnames, matching his. 2 were miles away, but the one which caught her eye lived close by, on the outskirts of Norwich. Yes. I've got you. Now it was time for action. Molly sat in her car, staring at the big house, where he lived. 2 garages, a massive garden, and parked in front was a sports car, which must have cost thousands. She needed to be careful. He was a very dangerous man, but if she could get him on his own, she might just have a chance. About an hour later, a man in his 50s left the house, carrying a briefcase. He had grey hair and was of average build. He stood a couple of inches taller than her, about 5'9". He got into his posh motor. He started the loud engine, then drove to the road, turning left. She followed. The lights occasionally would vanish, as the car would turn sharply, on the narrow lane. Molly needed to keep her eyes peeled. She'd been driving for 43 minutes. Where was he headed? Mist swirled from the surrounding fields. She felt terrified, but she wasn't going to let her mate down, like she did that fateful night. All of a sudden, his vehicle slowed down. On the right was a narrow lane, with tall trees on either side. He turned down it, and disappeared from view. Molly did the same. She slowed the car down, so it was going no faster than 15 miles per hour. The small road went on, when finally, she saw his vehicle again. The further she went, the closer his car seemed to get. With shock, she realized his motor was parked at the side of the road. What was he doing? From some distance away, Molly stopped the car, then waited. Not knowing what was going to happen next. She needed to keep her wits about her. Suddenly, the window beside her smashed. A hand grabbed Molly, pulling her through the now open door. She screamed. He pushed her to the ground, hard. The man stared at her, far from happy. Molly looked at him, and said defiantly, "Do what you want. But never forget my friend's name as long as you live. Her name was Suzanne. And you killed her, you bastard." He stood up and wiped his eyes, before replying, "One of my men fucked up. She wasn't supposed to be there. But we have a new problem now. You know who I am. Have you got any last requests? As you know, I can't let you leave here." "How did you know I was following you?" she asked. He laughed at this point, saying, "The idiot you saw earlier, Kevin's his name, rang me the moment you left. He's missing now, by the way. Presumed dead. One of my men tortured him, not too far from here. Now it's your turn, bitch." He placed both hands around her throat. Molly fought back, the best she could. She had an idea. Using her pointed nails, she dug them into his eyes. He let out a scream and stood up. Blood ran down his face. Molly kicked him in the balls hard. He fell to the ground, crying out in pain. A gun fell from his jacket pocket. Molly picked it up. He looked at her, worry on his face. "You haven't got the balls. Also, you wouldn't know what to do with it, you bitch," he shouted. Molly smirked, before replying confidently, "My dad was in the army for years, and he taught me everything I needed to know about guns, just in case I met jerks like you." "Don't do it. I beg you. The moment you do this, you'll never forgive yourself," he shouted, desperately. "Bullshit," was all she said. She aimed at his chest area, shooting him 3 times. That felt good. He dropped down dead. Finally, justice had been served. With difficulty, she lifted his body back into his car. Molly ran back to her vehicle, to get a can of petrol from the boot. A meter from the scumbag, Molly poured petrol all over him, then lit a match and threw it onto his lifeless body. Molly ran as far as she could away, just in case the car exploded. At a safe distance, she watched the flames engulf the vehicle. "Good riddance, asshole," she said. It was now time to go home. The end.